Let's talk about something fascinating, something you might have even noticed yourself. There's this strange paradox happening with Gen Z culture. You have a generation that seems to be starving for the very things that make life, full. And in this explainer, we're going to dig into why.
So here's the big puzzle we need to unpack. On one hand, you've got a generation that's absolutely obsessed with optimizing everything. I mean, their workouts, their diet, even their sleep. But then on the other hand, all the data suggests they're actually experiencing less of what life has to offer. So how can both of these things be true at the exact same time?
And this is where that contradiction just jumps right out at you. So in the goal column, right, we see all these massive social media trends all about optimization. You've got cottage cheese for protein, intermittent fasting for peak health, even something called sleepmaxxing, which is, yes, a trend about getting the perfect night's sleep. But then you look over at the result column, and while all this is going on, we're seeing a generation that's struggling to date, they're socializing less, and they're having less sex.
Which brings us to this really startling number, 24%. Get this, that's the percentage of 18 to 29-year-olds who said they didn't have sex at all in the past year. Now, just to give you some perspective, that's literally double the rate from back in 2010. A number like that tells you something way deeper is going on here than just some new health fads.
So what in the world could explain this? Well, the source material we're looking at argues that these trends aren't just random fads popping up. No, they point to something much, much bigger. A generation that's using restriction as a form of protection. The author of our source, who happens to be an eating disorder specialist, makes this really powerful connection. She says this obsession with control and restriction, it's not really about the food or the exercise. It's a symptom of a much wider choice to opt out of an abundant life. Because an abundant life is, by its very nature, unpredictable. And what's driving this is something psychologists call a scarcity mindset. Now, this is really important to understand. This is not a personal flaw. The source makes it clear that it's a perfectly valid, totally rational response to a world that feels incredibly unstable, both economically and socially. I mean, when the future feels that shaky, taking a chance on anything, a new job, a first date, even a big meal, can feel way too risky. And this isn't just a vibe or a feeling. The hard data really backs this up. Just look at this Gallup data. Pessimism about personal finances is at an all-time high. A majority, we're talking 53% of Americans, which you see in that bar, actually believe their financial situation is going to get worse. That level of anxiety creates a huge incentive to just play it safe. And this quote just gets right to the heart of the whole thing. We can't take chances when life feels so precarious. That's the emotional core of this whole phenomenon. For any young person trying to build a life, that feeling of everything being so fragile can be completely overwhelming. So what's the end result? Well, you get this kind of protective stagnation. It's a choice to do less, to risk less, to avoid failure, and to avoid all the inevitable messiness that comes with a full, rich life. But that safety, well, it comes with a pretty steep price. And this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. Because this entire strategy of seeking safety, this retreat into control and restriction, it comes with a very high and often totally hidden cost. It's a simple idea, but it's so powerful. The very thing you're doing to protect yourself can actually end up harming you in a completely different and maybe even more profound way.
And that hidden cost? It's the loss of resilience. Resilience is that essential human skill of being able to bounce back. Think of it like a muscle. You build that muscle by dealing with life's challenges, both the big ones and the small ones. It's what lets you push through all that instability.
This slide just lays out that trade-off perfectly. The action on the left is that we avoid the mess. We skip the awkward date. We duck out of the difficult conversation. We pass on the risky career move. But the consequence, over on the right, is that we actually lose the ability to clean up a mess when it happens. We never build those emotional muscles we need for when things inevitably go wrong. So here's the wild paradox. The strategy that's designed for survival in this unstable world, it actually undermines our long-term ability to survive that instability. By opting out of a full life to feel safe, we miss out on all the opportunities to build the very resilience that creates true security. Okay, so if that's the problem, is there a way out of this cycle? Well, thankfully, the source offers a really hopeful path forward, and it calls it a prescription for fullness. And the answer comes from a really surprising but powerful place: the playbook used in eating disorder treatment.
The thinking goes, if the problem is a kind of societal restrictive disorder, then maybe the solution looks a lot like the one we use for individuals. So, in treatment centers, patients are encouraged to practice 3 key things to rebuild their relationship with the world. First, to take up space, to assert their needs and their presence, because that's how you build self-worth. Second, to engage interpersonally, building real, face-to-face connections that fight back against isolation. And third, to get messy, to embrace imperfection and take small risks, because that is exactly how you learn to handle the unpredictable nature of life. When you really boil it all down, it comes back to this. It's a call to action. It's about disengaging from that optimized, curated, controlled world we see online and re-engaging with the messy, unpredictable, and ultimately much more fulfilling world that's right here in front of us.
And that leaves us with one last question to really chew on. In our collective quest for the perfect, optimized life, are we maybe forgetting how to actually live one? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for watching.